Hi, Tim Unkert here. In this video, we're going to continue with my late 2022 Python tutorial series. And we're up to the point, we're up to file 22. If you haven't seen the previous 3 videos, I'll leave a link for those in the description. We're going to start with file 22, or number 22, because some of the numbers have A, B, C, D, and so on. And this is split. Okay, so what we're going to do is, let's say we wanted to take in user input for a bunch of integers separated by a space. So what we could do is we could say that's an int string, because they're coming in as a string, array or list. That's going to be the name of my variable. And we'll input and we'll say, enter a bunch of integers separated no, I don't want that. Separated by a space, okay? And let's just format that like that, okay? And what's going to come in is basically strings, and we want to get these to be into a list, so we want to separate them by the space. So what we can do is dot split, and we can split it by the space. Okay, so now if we print the integer string array here, and we see what we get, what we're going to get when we run this, let's run it. We got an error here, hold on. Let me just view. Let me, hold on 1 minute. I just want to exit presentation mode for just 1 minute. And I want to switch this from main to current file. Okay, and now I'm going to go back to presentation mode. Okay, so let's run this again. And enter a bunch of integers separated by space. So let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Notice I could do better on the formatting here. And it's going to print them out, and it's going to print them out as strings. So this split has separated these by the space and created a list of strings. But let's say we wanted to make that integers. And let's put a colon here and have a space, so make that a little bit nicer. Well, what we can do, let's comment this out. What we can do is create an empty integer list. I'm going to call it integer underscore ARR for array. And what I can do is, in Python, I can say for int string in int string array. What I want to do is take the integer array, and I want to do this method. So I'm going to do dot append. And then I'm going to convert each integer string into an integer by using int and then passing the integer string in, like so. Okay, so now let's print out the integer list. Okay, so to do that, what we'll do is print and just the integer array, that list, that second list we created. Let's run it, and now let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now we have actually integers printed out. So we took it in, we converted each of these to strings, and we printed it out as a list of, or we converted each of these to a list of strings, and then we converted each of those to integers and printed out the integer array. Okay, so that's going to be enough for that file. Let me just select the project view here. There we go. And let's create another file. And this file, we're going to talk about join. Okay. So I'm going to create a new file. And remember, I'll leave a link to the GitHub repo down below. We're going to call this 023 underscore join. And it's a Python file, so it's going to be .py at the end of that. And let's create a nums list, or a list of a list of integers of numbers. So we'll create a numbers list of integers. So I'm going to say my underscore nums equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. And then we're going to create an empty string array. Does anyone watch Spaceballs who's watching? Comment in the comments below if you watch Spaceballs and you get the reference to the list I created. Okay, my nums as string, we're going to create an empty list there because we want to bring this back to strings. And then I'm going to loop through the numbers. So I'm going to say for num in my underscore nums. I'm going to take this my nums as string, and I'm going to append, and this time I am going to I'm going to use type conversion to create to take an integer and make it a string, and so I'm going to pass in the num here. Okay. Now I've got this my nums as string is a list of strings, but I want to put it back into just one string. So I'm going to say my underscore string equals, and I'm going to join them based off the space. So I'm going to do a space here, dot join, and then I'm going to pass in my nums as string here. Okay. I'm going to go down here, and now I'll print out my string at the end of this program. We'll run that, and we get this one string, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So we've taken a list of integers, converted it to a list of strings, and then use the join method to put it all into one string. Hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, comment in the comments below, and maybe someone else who is watching can answer it, or if I get to it, I will answer it. All right, next one going to be file. We're going to call this 024 underscore zip.py. Okay. And we'll show you how to use zip with iterables. Okay, so I'm going to create a bunch of names, a names list. And in the names list, I'm going to have Tim, I'm going to have Sarah, I'm going to have Sean, I'm going to have Joe, and I'm going to have Aaron. Okay. And then I'm going to have some ages. And the ages are going to be 46, 48, 47, 46, and 47. And what I'm going to use is zip, and I'm going to pass it into this variable. I'm going to call it info, and I'm going to say equals zip, and then I'm going to zip the names with the ages. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'll first print out info to show you what we get from that. So if we do that, you notice we get a zip object at this place in memory. Okay. Well, that's not that helpful, but let's convert info into a list. So I'm going to use the list here function and pass in info. And now I'm going to run it. And you notice we have a list. And what these are in parentheses, these are called tuples. So we have a list of tuples where we have Tim with 46, Sarah with 48, Sean with 47, Joe with 46, Aaron with 47. So it is a way to use zip to maybe with two iterables to organize your data in that particular way into tuples, which we'll be talking more about as we get later on in this series, not in part 4, but possibly part 5 or part 6. It is coming. Okay. So let's just close that out. And that's what I wanted to show you about zip so far. I also want to create another file. We're going to talk about multidimensional lists. Okay. So I'm going to go call this 025 underscore multidimensional lists. And it's a .py file. All right, so I'm going to create, based off our last one, we had a variable called info. I'm going to create a multi-dimensional list with that data. So I'm going to open and close these square brackets here. And then within each of those, I'm going to have a list with a name and an age. And after each of these, I'm going to have a comma, except for the last one. So we're going to have, we had Tim, then we have Sarah, then we have Sean, And if you may be able to hear my kitty in the background, he is meowing because we are traveling right now. He's getting used to a new spot. All right, so we have Joe is 46. Aaron is going to be 47. And we'll do one more. We'll have Will. We'll have him be quite a bit younger. He's going to be 16. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to iterate through this multidimensional list just to give you a taste of multidimensional lists. So what I'm going to say is for row in info. Okay, we're going to go through and then we're going to have a nested for loop. We're going to say for column in row. We're going to say if column does not equal row, the last row. So row at index -1 would be the last row. Then what we're going to do is we're going to print the column, and we're going to alter the end behavior. We're going to say end equals comma, and then age with a colon and a space like that. So we can actually do that in Python. And but if it is the last row, we're just going to print the column. Okay. All right. So we'll run this program, and you'll see down here we get Tim, age 46, Sarah, age 48, Sean, age 47, Joe, age 46, Aaron, age 47, and Will, age 16. Okay, so that's a way we can use multidimensional list. I hope that whetted your taste for multidimensional list. And let's move to the next one. So next file, we're going to talk about list comprehension. Okay, so we're going to create a new Python file. I'm going to call this 026 underscore list underscore comprehension. And this will give you a little taste of list comprehension. So we can use list comprehension to unpack an array, or unpack a range rather. So I could create a list called 2_100. And I could say, and I can name this variable anything. I'm going to use x, but I could say x for x in range from 1 to 101 because we go one higher than the last number we want to go to. And now if I go and I print, actually, let me iterate through it. So let's go for number in 2_100, print number. And let's just have it end with a space like that. Okay, so I can iterate through that, and you see I get numbers, and if we go out, we go all the way to 100, and they're separated by spaces. So what I've used is this thing called list comprehension here. This is the syntax to basically create a list from 1 to 100. Okay, we could also, let's comment this out. We can also use conditionals in list comprehension. So what I could do is, let's first create a fizz list. I did do a little fizz buzz, I believe, in one of the previous videos. But we could just create a fizz list for numbers that are divisible by 3. That's what I'm talking about. So if you don't know the whole thing, look at some of the previous videos. So I could say x for x in 2_100. So we're taking a list that's been created now. And we can say if x modulo 3 equals 0. Okay, so this is just basically going to take numbers that are divisible by 3 and put them into the list. Okay, and what we can do is we could loop through that. We could say something like for fizzy in fizz list, let's print fizzy. Okay. All right. So let's just run this. And okay, so it prints out all these numbers, and you see they're all divisible by 3. So we got 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, so on and so forth, all the way to 99. Okay. Sounds like it's raining outside. Okay, I'm going to comment this stuff out. And what I'm going to do now is do a fizz else list. So I'll show you if else in list comprehension. So I'll do fizz else list equals, we're going to say fizz, this is the syntax, if x modulo 3 double equals 0, else x for x in, and then we want to put the iterable that we're working our way through, which is going to be to 100. Okay. So now we've created that list. Let's print the fizz else list. So let's run it. Okay, and we get 1, 2 fizz, 4, 5 fizz, 7, 8 fizz, and so on, all the way up to 100. Okay, so that's some things you can do with list comprehension. That's just one example. You can obviously play with this, and you should play with this as you're learning it or reviewing it, which may be the case. All right, so now I'm going to create a new Python file. I'm going to call this 027 underscore map.py. We're going to talk about map, and I don't have to put the .py. My IDE does it for me. And what I'm going to do now with map is map allows me to pass in a function and an iterable, and then it applies the function to each item in the iterable. So I'm going to create a function. We haven't talked a ton about functions, but just as remember, I can't even remember if we've talked about it or not, but let's just say we haven't. So we start with def to define a function. Then we want to give a name. So I'm going to say square underscore nums. Then we have open and close parentheses, colon, and we're going to put our code here including what we're going to return. Now we also have parameters that we can list up here that we pass into the function. So I'm going to say num is my parameter, and to square it, I'm just going to return num times num, because when you square a number, you multiply it by itself. Okay, so that's my function. Now I'm going to create a list, my nums equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Remember, if you're a fan of Spaceballs and you know what I'm talking about, comment in the comments below. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to say squares equals, and we're going to use this map function. We're going to use map, and then we're going to pass in the function. Sorry about that. I don't know why that popped up. We're going to pass in the function without the parentheses. So we're going to just say square nums, and this automatically wants to give me the parentheses, but I'm not going to use those. And then we're going to do my nums. Okay, so if it's going to take each item in this, and then in the list my nums, and pass it into this square nums function, basically squaring it. Okay, and it's going to put it in this list called squares. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to say for square in squares. You can call this whatever you want. You could say for number and squares or whatever, but it seems like you go with the singular, the plural is kind of like a way a lot of people do it. So what we're going to do is we're going to print the square. Okay, so if we run this, we see we get 1 squared is 1, 2 squared is 4, 3 squared is 9, 4 squared is 16, and 5 squared is 25. Okay, so that's a little bit about map. Like I said, play with it. And next file, we're going to talk about filter. Okay, so I'm going to create a new Python file here, 027 underscore filter. Okay, and for filter, I'm going to use a math function here. So I'm going to import math, so I can use that. And what I'm going to say now, I'm going to do def, and I'm going to define a function. And I'm going to call this function is underscore perfect underscore square. And the idea behind this function is we pass in a number, and you check if that number is a perfect square. So I'm going to pass in a number, and to check that, I'm going to have a conditional here. I'm going to say if, and we're going to do math.square root. That's why I brought in that library, the code for the math code. I'm going to say if the square root of num equals the integer of the square root of the num. Okay, because what that's going to do, it's going to cut off the decimal part, and so they should both be equal to one another if they are perfect square. So, for instance, the square root of 9 is going to be 3, and the integer of the square root of 9 is also going to be 3. But the square root of 5 is going to be a little bit more than 2. Right? It's going to have some decimal portion, but the integer of the square root of 5 is going to be just 2. So they're not going to be equal. So it's not going to meet this condition. I hope that makes sense. And what I'm going to do is return true if it meets this condition. So it's going to return a Boolean one way or the other. Otherwise, and actually we don't even need the else statement here because it's going to either meet that condition or not. So we're just going to say return false. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to create an array of numbers. Let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's actually do some more numbers. 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And what I'm going to do is create another variable called perfect squares, and this is going to be a list. So perfect squares is going to equal, and we're going to use filter. And what we're going to do with filter is we're going to pass in a function. So we'll pass in the function is perfect square, again, without these parentheses. And we'll also pass in the list, the iterable. You can use this on iterable. So we're going to pass in the iterable nums. And now what I can do is I'm going to print. First, let me print perfect squares just to show you what I get. And then I'm going to print something else. So if I do this and I first print perfect squares, I get a filter object at this place in memory. Okay, but what I really want is to make this into a list. So I'm going to print the list of perfect squares. And if I do that, I'm going to get 1, 4, and 9. Okay? This is my list of perfect squares. Kitty, you really are talking, aren't you? All right. Yes, my kitty he is a talker. Okay. All right. Next thing I want to talk about is a few other functions that we can use with lists. All right, so let's create another file. Let's call this 029. I'm going to call it sum because that's going to match the GitHub repository, so sum.py. But I also am including a few other things in here. So let's create a nums list, and I'm going to stick with the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 because I like Spaceballs. It's a good movie. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to print, and I can use sum, so I can print the sum of the nums. Okay, so if I run this, we get 15, which is the sum of 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5. Okay, so we can get the sum. We can also get the max. So we can print, I'm going to print the max of the nums, and we can also print the min of the nums. Okay, so if we run that, we get 15 as the sum, then 5 is the max, and 1 is the min. Okay. We can also create, in this file, let's create a list of other numbers, and these are going to be out of order. So I'm going to have 12, 9, 100, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 probably. And what I want to do here is I'm going to sort the list. So first off, I'm going to try and print the other nums dot sort like so. And if I run this, you'll see I get a none object or none, right? But what now I'm going to do is what I'm actually going to do is print the list. Okay. All right. So because the method's returning none, but it's actually doing something. So I'm going to print other nums. And now if we run this, we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 9, 12, 100. So it has sorted the list in numerical order. Now, if you use letters, for instance, it will sort it based off the ASCII value. So there's a difference between lowercase letters and uppercase letters. You can delve more into that if you really want to, but I'm not going to cover it in this video, or at least just yet in this tutorial. We'll see if I cover it later. All right, so next thing I want to start talking about is dictionaries in Python. So it's another very important data type. So we'll create a new Python file, and I'm going to call this 030a _ dictionaries. age.py, okay? And to create a dictionary, well, first let's assign it to a variable. So I'm going to say my_dict equals, and I'm going to do an open and close curly braces like so. And then a dictionary has key value pairs, okay? So I'm going to create a key, and the key are in quotations. And then you can have like a string, like my name is going to be Timothy Unkert, so that's going to be the value. I can then have age, which is a key, and an integer value of 46. And I could have something like GPA, which is going to be a floating point number. I'm going to put mine as 4.0. Okay. All right. So what we're going to do here is we are going to iterate through the keys of the dictionary. So keys here, key, value, key, value, key, value. Okay. So I'm going to say 4, and I can call this variable whatever I want, but a lot of times you'll see 4K in my dict dot keys. Okay. I'm going to print K. Okay. So this, when I run it, we get the 3 keys, name, age, and GPA. Okay. Hope that makes sense. Okay. And now I'm going to iterate through the values in the dictionary. And I can do that by saying 4. And again, I could call this whatever I want, but a lot of times you might see V. So 4V in my dict.values, and I'll print the values, okay? So if we run it now, we're going to get the values, Timothy Unkert, 46 and 4.0, okay? Now you can also print the key value pairs. So you might see something like 4K, comma V in my_dict.items. This is how you do it for the key value pair. We could print something like print. I'm going to do K, do a comma. In quotes, I'll do colon and then V. Okay. Oops, and I have an extra space or two in here. Okay. So do I have an extra space here? Let me see. No. Okay. So I'm going to run this, and now we get the key value pair. So you get name, colon Timothy Unkert, age, colon 46, GPA, colon 4.0. Okay. So that's the first thing I want to talk about with dictionaries. Now we're going to create another file, and I'll show you. We're going to have a list of dictionaries. So I'm going to create a new Python file. I'm going to call this 030b_dictionaries.py. Okay, so I'm going to create a list called student info, or student_info. It's going to be a list. So open and close square brackets. And then inside of each of these, I'm going to have a dictionary with key value pairs of name. So the first one's going to be name, values, Timothy Unkert. Second one is age, value is 46. Third one is GPA, value is 4.0. Okay, now notice the last key value pair, I don't put a comma after. After each of these dictionaries, except for the last one, I'll put a comma. So I'm hoping you're seeing that pattern. Again, play with this to get good at it. So next one, we're going to have name, Sarah, age, 49, and GPA, let's do 3.0. Okay, next one. So we're having a few different dictionaries of student info in this list. So we're going to have name, Sean, age, 47, and GPA is going to be 3.5. Okay. All right. So now that we have this list of dictionaries, what we can do is we can iterate through this. So what we could do is we could do a for loop. We could say for student in student info. Well, what I want to do is first I'm going to print a little separator here. This is just for a visual effect. It doesn't really have much to do with the topic other than just make it easier to see. And then I'm going to iterate through each student and print out both the key value pair by typing in 4, K, comma, V, in student dot items. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to print K, and then we'll do our colon here, and then V, okay? All right, so let's run this. And if we scroll up, let's move this up here. So we can see we've got our students each separated here. There's myself, there's Sarah, there's Sean. We iterated through all of the student info, okay? Hopefully that's helpful there. All right, so that's what I wanted to talk about in that file, okay? Next one is going to be a little bit simplistic, and I might not be going in the best order here, but we're going to create another Python file, 030c underscore dictionaries dot py. And I'm going to create just one dictionary called my underscore dict equals, and again, we'll do name Timothy Unkert, age 46, and GPA 4.0. Okay, now what you can do is you can print out the values from each of the keys. So what we can do is we can print my dict, and then the name of the key. So in this case, name. Okay, so if I run this, I'm going to get Timothy Unkert, and I can also print my underscore dict, pass in age, and I could also print my underscore dict and pass in GPA, okay? And now if I run this, so I can access each of the values. So Timothy Unkert, 46, 4.0. Okay, so that's all I pretty much wanted to talk about in that file. We're going to talk about one more, and then I'm going to conclude part 4. Just talking about in and not in. So what I'm going to do here is create a new Python file, call it 030d underscore dictionaries. Okay. And again, we'll create my dict equals same thing. Name, Timothy Unkert, age, 46, and GPA 4.0. Okay, and what we can do is we can now check to see if a value is in the dictionary or not. So first one I'm going to do is print. We'll say name in my underscore dict. And what we'll do is we'll print it, and we get true because name is one of the keys. Now, interestingly, if we do something like print Timothy Unkert in my dict, we see it's in the values, but what happens here is we're going to get false because this is only looking at the keys. Okay, so this refers to the keys. Okay, we can also do not in, so we could print something like age and then do not in my dict. And in this case, we'll get false because age is one of the keys. But if we did print, so if we did print age in my dict, last one here, we're going to get true. Okay. All right. I think that concludes this section. If you have any questions, again, put a comment in the comments below, and either I'll try to get to it, or hopefully someone watching it could answer it as well. I want to thank you for watching. Also, if you really like this video, please give it a like. And if you haven't subscribed, consider subscribing, as it really does help the channel grow. I want to thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.